Pareja, so it can blow your mind. He's been in the industry since he was 19. By the time he was 28, Leo, this is incredible. By the time you were 28, you were the number one agent in the world for another company, a very big company. And of course, 30 under 30, you were number one agent in the top 250 of NAREP, which is something that this month we highlighted a lot of our top 250s inside of eXp Latino. So that, as if that wasn't enough, you also have built and sold some really successful companies, in our space. So I would just love to hear a little bit about how the heck at 19 do you get into real estate and you just go crush it? What's your background? Tell us a little bit about the family stuff that maybe we don't know, and then we'll kind of get into some of the other pieces and highlights of your career. And what I'm excited about is learning about, like, where is Leo Pareja right now in his role, his leadership role, and where does he see the market going to, and just some of those very valuable nuggets. So, Leo, thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview with us. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Rosie. I'm excited to be here and even more excited to be part of eXp. This is probably month 5 since I've got here. So I'll try to keep it brief on the backstory so we can jump into stuff that's pertinent to right now. But like you said, I got into real estate at 19. I was in school. My college degrees in graphic design and web design, which happened to be in the year 2000. So I learned very early on in my career how markets shift and bubbles burst. And right now we're experiencing that. And I probably want to spend as much time as possible talking about that, because I would venture to guess that half the agents that are currently in the business have only been here post 2012, right? So they've never done a price reduction. They've never had property sit for 8 months, even if it's completely renovated and shows beautifully, right? So there are things that people haven't experienced. And one of the things that is very unique about real estate is that nothing's new. We've lived through market cycles before. We will live through this one. And, you just got to be prepared to shift quickly. But I started in college. I would sell houses to my fraternity brothers' parents for off-campus housing. And my sophomore year of college, I sold 11 homes, made 60 grand, and decided this is what I was going to do with the rest of my life. So I went on to sell close to 4,000 homes. The market exploded in a bad way in 2006. I lived through that crisis, learned how to pivot, became one of the largest REO agents in the country. Did expansion before there was a name for it. I was selling 200 homes a month in 18 different markets and 4 time zones at one point. I saw an opportunity when Dodd-Frank and CFPB came out to do hard money lending before it was a thing in 2012, when residential real estate was a bad word. I scaled that business, built a loan origination system, became one of the largest hard money lenders in the country, convinced Wall Street to buy short-term debt. And as I was doing that, I needed public record data. And then I started another little company called Remind, which there's a 80% chance folks on this call touched, because that's the market coverage we got to. And I exited all those companies in the last couple of years. And I had moved to South Florida and spending a lot of time with my family and doing a lot of spearfishing when Glenn came looking for me and said, I want you to join our leadership team and help us continue our path forward.
So I heard an interesting part of the story here, that when Glenn Sanford came to talk to you, there was no definitive role. He just knew he wanted to be in business with you, right?
Yes, yeah. It was very interesting, because I said, "What do you want me to do?" And he's like, "I just want you to be part of the team." And we actually spent quite a few months figuring out where I could add the most value. And he basically put it on me to look at the portfolio and look at what they had done and see where I could give the most assistance to. And I was the one who suggested, let me go after all affiliated services companies, opportunities. Because if you look at the legacy players who've been at it for 20, 30, 50 years, they've done that well. And we've gone from being a 10,000 person company to now an 84,000 plus agent company. So we're still young, and we haven't capitalized on the scale and size we now have.
Yeah, I think that's probably because we've grown so fast. I was here 4.5 years ago, and we only had 6,000 agents, and so to kind of imagine where we're at right now and where we're going to be is a pretty interesting conversation. And speaking on that, Leo, because you've been in the market for so many cycles and you've seen things go up and down. I don't know how old you are, but I know you've been in the business. You're 19. Tell me, like, what in your opinion? And I ask this because I know that you have a visionary type, talent, right? And you've been through different cycles and you've shifted and you've been able to pivot effectively as the markets have shifted. What do you think is important for us coming into this next market? I think that's on everybody's mind.
So I'll share with you guys a truism that I think people need to remember when they talk about residential real estate. So first of all, we're in an asset class all unto ourselves. If you were to look at investment grade portfolios of assets, you have commercial real estate, you have public stocks, public equities, private equities, and debt. But we're the only one that also happens to store human beings. So what do I mean by that? If I owned an office building or a retail location or anything that's purely investment grade, and there's a collapse in the economy, businesses could shut down and I could actually have a vacancy for 2 years. That happened in 2008. I had friends who owned warehouse space and office space that just sat literally vacant for years. But residential real estate stores human beings. And it becomes a very simple math formula. And this if folks want to write this stuff down, this is why I stay very calm throughout these moments. It's a math problem. There are 380 million humans in America. There's X amount of households. And every year, based on population growth, for the last number of decades, we continue to expand household formation. So every year there is a demand for new housing, right? As people become of age, create a household, get married. And I've always simplified residential housing moves to just a couple things. What is that? People fall in love, they make little people, they need more space, they need less space. Death, divorce, and a couple promotions along the way are really the only reasons we move. You don't move because the interest rate is perfect. You don't move because you feel like it. Moving is not fun. We do it an average of 3 times in our entire lifetimes as a purchase transaction. Rentals are more transient, but there's reasons why we have to do it. And again, I spent a lot of time talking to software companies, and I've spent a lot of time in the startup ecosystem. And people are like, "Oh, people are going to do this." No, people are going to need to move because in a life event, right? They had a baby and the 1 bedroom doesn't work anymore. They're going to get qualified for a loan. They're going to find the maximum they can buy. And then they're going to look in the geography they can afford. And they're going to buy the most they can buy, which is convenient to their lifestyle. That's it. There's nothing else that changes. So what I do know is that every year people need to move because of some life event, right? And they can either afford to buy or rent, and houses will trade hands, whether it's to humans or institutions. So it could be a hedge fund, it could be a foreclosure, it could be a homeowner, but properties trade hands. And if you look over a 20, 30-year period, you'll see that it's actually a very finite fixed number. So the highest trades we've ever had in a 20-year cycle is about 6 million homes. And that happened in 2006, and that happened last year. The lowest we've ever had trade in a given year is roughly 4 million homes, which happened in 2009 at the bottom of the crisis. And I'm not an economist, but the range is between 4 to 6 million homes. My bet is it's going to be closer to 4 next year. So what does that mean? There are less transactions to be had. So there is currently 1.6 million realtors. That's the highest it's ever been. The lowest it's ever been in the last 20 years is closer to 1 million. So what will happen is there's less homes to be touched, right, on either the buy side or the sell side. And so there's going to be more attrition. People are going to go back to where they came from, or they're going to pivot and survive, right? So it's super binary to me. Look, people need real estate. This is a fundamental, it's food, water, and shelter, right? That's like the stuff we need in order to survive as human beings. So this is a very primary, basic need. And so if you're helping people navigate this market, you're going to do just fine. But there's going to be some pain that hasn't been experienced in a while. And in a way, the strong will actually survive. And I had my best years ever in my career, 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13.
And I think something that you said is really, kind of caught my attention in terms of geography, because there's so many areas. I'm in California, Southern California, and you're in Miami. Um, and inside of Southern California, there's areas that they're at a better price point and whatnot. And so, when I think about geography, I also think about price points. Do you have an opinion on the first time home buyer market as opposed to somebody in the millions and whatnot? I mean, I have my own opinion, but I'd want to hear yours. What's going to move?
Yeah. So again, it's all tied to one ecosystem, right? The move up buyer creates the equity for the person who had the first time home buyer to move up to the next one, and eventually to the luxury price point. So no one starts in the luxury price point. Typically, it's almost that ladder of economic ability to go upwardly mobile. But affordability is the biggest denominator that we're dealing with now. Rates went materially higher, and so there is going to be less people who can afford homes. Which again, so depending on the economists you listen to, we're short 5 million all the way to 10 million homes, right? When we were getting for 1 or 2 years straight 50 offers on average per listing, that was not sustainable long term. So again, agree or disagree with the Fed, it's working, right? They're slowing everything down. They're slowing the kind of intensity of the market and the debt markets and everything else. And everyone's having to reassess. I think we're going to remove the want and only focus on the need in the economy with the price increases in interest rates. But again, I think this is a huge opportunity for the folks that take the business very seriously.
Now, I mean, another question that comes to mind is, Leo, you've done so many incredible things in your career. You could have been fishing for the rest of your life, right? You're just, you're great. What's the reason that you came to eXp? And the second question to that, because you didn't have to, there's absolutely no need to, but there was something in the conversation, something in your vision, that you saw was possible here. And does that tie into, how do you think that eXp Realty is positioned into going into this shift?
Yeah, no, good question. So I was, all the other opportunities I had were actually in tech and finance and private equity. I wasn't really interested in organized real estate as a next step. But when Glenn called me and I got to understand the model a little bit better, I got excited because funny enough, if you look up some keynotes I've done in the last couple of years during Q&A, people ask me, who do you think survives or thrives in a downturn? And I would say eXp. And and that was before I was inside and actually understood truly the value of the model. But when you look at the fixed costs associated with brick and mortar, it's very expensive to expand in real estate. And without naming names, but we know some companies who raise a lot of money and expanded and have this very expensive fixed cost that doesn't scale down quick enough in a shifting market like we're experiencing, right? So I think eXp agents are positioned with all the tools best in class while keeping their personal business expenses low. But I think from an attraction standpoint, eXp is a perfect platform if you're a small independent broker, right? I would say anything from 10 to 50 to 100 agents. I've seen the math. It is cheaper, better execution, leverageable, scalable, right? I did expansion into multiple states. I know how difficult licensing is and having to cut different deals with different brokerages to be able to like you could be with a national company, but at the end of the day, franchises are independent companies. So even though I was with one national brand, when I did expansion, I had to cut an individual deal with every market and every personality, and that person didn't have to accept my terms, right? That was my ability to hopefully come up with a win-win situation versus if an agent is at eXp or a broker's at eXp, they have that ability to cross state lines, county lines, whatever it is, it just becomes this much easier platform to use. And I don't think I had thought about eXp as a platform before I got here, right? So eXp is a platform that allows business owners to be able to scale what it is they do.
I love that word, scaling, scalability, and I know that it's used a lot. When I think about that, what comes to mind is, way back in the day when you had the door to door vacuum sales people, right? And they would it's one person, it's a one to one relationship. And then of course the evolution of that becomes, Costco and then Amazon and all these things. So when I think about, the position of the companies that have been around for a very long time, it's very much the mom and pop. Even if it's 50 people, 100 people, or 150 people, we're not. It's a very much a mom and pop. Like you are contained in this space. You've got fixed expenses. You've got certain staffing requirements. All those things. And the talent pool inside that office is also limited. The amount that you can learn and you can grow. So since we're having this conversation, I mean, how do you see the like, how do you bridge the gap between someone who is in their mind thinking, you know what, I kind of like my little company, my little brand, my little, my space, and why would I want to do something with a virtual real estate company like EXP? What would you say to that?
So I think, so if you look at any economic cycle, there's no two that are identical, right? So even though the past repeats itself, if you look at the fundamentals, of the S&L crisis in the early 90s to the Great Recession of 2006 to what's going to happen now. And I don't know what it's going to be called and what we're going to learn 5 years from now, but we'll be able to look back and go, oh yeah, obviously this, I think we printed way too much money, but we'll be able to, in retrospect, really point the finger and it'll be really obvious. There was another shift that happened in the last 2 years, which none of us were prepared for, which was COVID, right? I was a very strong proponent that you had to be in office, that you couldn't build culture without an office. And my Remind's HQ was in DC, which is very expensive real estate and very expensive payroll because I'm competing with Google and Amazon, right? We had to go virtual in 30 days. We had physical office space in DC, Chicago, Toronto, and LA, right? Probably the most expensive real estate in North America. We had to shut it all down per the government and put everybody at homes. We sent a survey and like 70% of the people said they never want to set foot in an office again, right? And then all those leases came due and we just got out of them. And what also happened, which was interesting, which affects real estate, is that as we were doing our Zoom calls and meetings, I started seeing people's backgrounds change. And not the virtual one, but the actual one. I said, where'd you go? And they're like, oh, I moved up to New Jersey, being close to my parents. Oh, I'm in Texas. And I think, so a couple things happened. One is we broke the spell, if you will, that we had to be physically in the same place, right? Because the other thing that I think about a lot is as human beings, we're a species of monkey, right? That is very tribal, where we need connection, but we're very ritualistic. So a lot of the things we do are just rituals, whether it's high school, marriage, church, whatever it is, it's a ritual that we're accustomed to. And one of them was we had to work together, right? Like, for example, when I was selling software and it was big, expensive enterprise software, I had never done a deal over Zoom, zero. It was non-negotiable. It couldn't happen. It had to be in person. What happened after the pandemic? We did every deal over Zoom, and never again did we meet in person because it was inefficient for me to fly into a town, get 17 board members to show up on a Tuesday at the same time. Everyone's like, no, let's just meet over Zoom, right? So the same thing happened with housing, and the same thing happened with work at scale. So I think for the first time, people actually are picking where they live based on what's important to them, not what's important to their work, right? So I think a lot of people, and again, we had another internal conversation with actual fear of death, right? It's like, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, it's like, oh my God, I could die. Anyone could die at any age, right? So I think a lot of people move to be closer to family, move to be closer to what's important to them. So for example, I would have never said yes to Glenn if he actually asked me to leave Miami, because I realized that the ocean is super important to me. I'm out on the water all the time. I'm Latino y no me gusta el frío para nada. So I can't be in a place that's cold ever again. That's just not happening. My blood's thinned out. This is where I belong, right? So it doesn't matter how big an opportunity is. Some things are no longer negotiable. That used to be negotiable. So when you look at it like that, any any small business owner who has said it, well, she or he thinks I can't do this. I think that all those ideals were shattered, and especially when you the trade-off is a much larger network, a much deeper bench of folks to be in relationship with, right? You're no longer just geographically stuck. And prior to the pandemic, I think the only way to get that was to actually show up to national events, whether it's brokerage or masterminds by coaches. But this company has was built for this. It was built this way from day one, and so I think those trade-offs are pretty obvious.
And it's funny because I had the same experience when COVID hit. I was like, oh my gosh, we're all gonna like, we're going into this massive depression or something crazy is gonna happen. And so the only means that we had to communicate, with our group was Zoom. That's the only thing we could do, right, with clients and whatnot. So it was really interesting, for me to experience how we were able to create culture and community with this, like now face to face is this, it's Zoom, right? And this is great. We can read body language. We can, see when we're smiling. We can laugh together. And it's so much more efficient than, like you said, jumping on a plane and let's have this physical meeting, right? Um, so I agree with you, and I think even if we kind of take a step back and we look at, you've been part of large, real estate companies. I've been part of large real estate companies, and the reality is that in most real estate offices, where you got 50, 20, 50, 100, 200, 300 people, there's a very small percentage of people inside the real estate space that actually use the space as like a home-based office. Usually
I was part of a 300-person office, and I don't think I ever saw more than 20 people ever,
right,
including the staff.
right, right. So yeah, I mean, when you think about that as a business owner or broker or whatnot, and you're carrying the overhead for 10,000 square feet, like, how does that make sense? Right? Just to kind of say, this is my pretty office. So, outside of the fact that we're not bound by, geographical areas, or we don't have any of those constraints, what are the other competitive advantages that you think that we hold, knowing that you're on the inside of the whole tech side and inside?
Yeah, so I'm going to make some very fun announcements. So make sure you're at eXpCon for the opening general session. But I think I didn't appreciate how we're the largest single monolithic brokerage, and I'm using that word very specifically. So if you look at the other national companies, they're all franchises. So if you have a client or an opportunity, you basically, to be national, you're contending with 600 independent business owners, right? We are one broker per state, one transaction management platform, one CRM, one way of doing business, which makes it so much easier for just about anything and everything you do that scales, right? I'm going to be introducing some solutions to you guys that I've been refining, and I'm obsessed with making them part of the workflow. So I'm going to insert buttons and processes when it's most likely for you to use it. You just click a button, right? I can't do that if I was at corporate at another national company. It'd be 600 different people that at the end of the day don't have to use the same CRM, don't have to use the same transaction management platform, because at the end of the day, all franchisees get is a franchise fee, right? So they're not even participating in the economics. That is that small business owner's business and how you touch it. So again, especially where I'm sitting in the world, for you guys and adding value to your transactions on a daily basis, that's where I think, even when I've called vendors who know who we are, knew who I was in the space, and I explained that, they're like, "Oh my God, I didn't realize that." So that's a different opportunity. We're a much better partner and solution for some of the stuff that I'm going to announce on Wednesday without giving some stuff away.
I'm so excited. I'm really, really excited because knowing your background and knowing that you've kind of put your hand in what we're doing is exciting, very exciting. And I think that's one of the things that I noticed too. Obviously, like agility is part of our core values, right? Being agile, being able to, you know, implement something right away. And technology is another one. So I think just being in this position where we have, we're on the forefront of technology, we're definitely agile. And I think one of the things that we don't talk about a lot is that everybody who is, making the decisions has this innovative entrepreneurial energy and spirit, and we're all stock owners. And so I think that brings a different level of ownership. I mean, that's how I feel. Just being involved in the company, I feel like it's my company, and that kind of, you know, buy-in or that mindset doesn't kick in if you're just an agent at a company, or you're just a franchise owner who like, hey, the franchise company's getting paid, but I'm doing all the work, right? I know some brokers that have felt that way, and they take on the liability. But so thank you for those comments. And one of the things, I mean, again, we're here, we're celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month, and I'm very excited. Excuse me, I'm very excited about the fact that a lot of the people in the leadership roles, like yourself, Leo, are making the decisions and are hands-on, and we can identify with, like, when I look at you, I see, este puede ser mi primo, right? Like, we connect, we have some cultural similarities, and obviously we have differences and whatnot. But I want to get to some of the nitty-gritty about my primo Leo, right? So Leo, where is your family from? Where are you from? Tell me some of the cultural things that are important to you, that some of the things that you love about your culture.
Yeah, so I'm 100% Colombian, which is rare. I took the DNA test, and it said I'm from Colombia, going back 3-4 generations. But more than that, that's very unique about my story is I feel more Latino than the average because my father worked for a NGO in DC that did health development all over Latin America. So I lived in 6 different South American countries as a kid. Not visited on vacation, lived. So Honduras, Dominican Republic, Ecuador, Bolivia, Colombia, Panama, and I did at least 1 school year all the way to 5 school years in some of these countries. So, some people say my accent, you can't pick it up because it's a little blended. I can insult you in 4 different ways in Spanish from depending on the country that we're talking about. I've tried every version of arepa empanada and arroz con pollo because every country claims they invented all of them. So I feel, I've been in Central America, South America, and the Caribbean. And so I think I've had a very unique vantage point to Latino culture that most, even Latinos, have not experienced.
And what tell me a couple of things that you're like really proud of, or that you really enjoy about being a Latino.
Yeah, I think about this a lot, right? So if you look at the story of America, it was immigrants who built it. No question about it. That is the truth about America. But if you look at most of the immigration, so first of all, and as you mentioned in the beginning, I spent a lot of my time actively fighting for Latino rights. I was NARP's national president. So I not only founded the DC chapter, I went on to be on the national chapter. And I did a lot of, I was in the room when it happened with CFPB representing Latinos at the White House, at the Comptroller of Currency in 2009, 10. I've had a front row seat to a lot of things. But if we look at the origin story of America, it's waves of immigration depending on chaos somewhere else, right? The Chinese, the Irish, the Italians, the Europeans, depending on, going back 200 years. And one common thread that I've always seen in history is that these folks they assimilated really quickly into U.S. culture, right? So families said, stop speaking the language outside of the house, and they assimilated quickly. And we've shown up here, but we haven't forgotten who we are. And if anything, we're assimilating the culture here. And when people say that, when I say that, they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, who are the top 5 pop stars now, right? It's Maluma, it's Bad Bunny, it's Karol G, it's Shakira, who had the halftime show, right? And Taco Tuesday is accepted everywhere. Ceviche is at every fancy restaurant. It's just our culture is warm, it's loving, and it's inviting. And I think everyone wants to be a part of it.
I couldn't agree more. I think that what you'll experience, and I do experience this in other cultures as well, but I can speak very strongly about like all culture. I'm Mexican, but like the way that we connect, it's part of who we are. Saludamos, nos despedimos. We have certain things that really just embody family, community, all those things. Um, Side note, fun fact: yesterday was National Taco Day. I didn't even know that. I found out at the end of the day. But I was thinking about, like, you cannot have a gathering in any function, any event, and if you serve tacos, like, it's a hit, right? Everybody embraces, the flavor that we bring, the music, and I think, like you said, we're very inclusive inside. And people don't know this, but inside, Latin American countries, we have all shades, all colors, blue eyes, blonde hair, dark skin, everything. And I think that us having an opportunity to have so much diversity within our community allows us to also be so inclusive, here in the United States, of, the different communities that come in, the immigrants, the people that are here. Like, we see family, and not so much, some of the other limitations that sometimes, we've experienced, right? So, well, I'm super excited, Leo. I mean, I think coming into this interview, I wasn't 100% sure on what the things that you were going to share, how it was going to pertain, but I love that we've had like a really high level conversation about, the market, about our company, about how things have trended in the past and how they're trending differently in the future. And I also love that I now know that you're Colombian, 100% Colombian, and that you lived in all these different countries. And just thank you so much for stepping into this role, for your leadership. I can say, just in the few experiences that we've had, Leo, like, you are incredibly focused, incredibly intelligent, probably one of the most brilliant minds that I've come across. And so I'm excited to be part of this company with you, and part of wherever you're going to take us. Aquí estoy, aquí vamos familia, right? So
Thank you so much for the kind words, and thank you for inviting me on here. And if you guys see me at EXPCon, come say hi. I'm excited to meet everybody.
yes, fantastic. Can't wait for the announcements. Thank you guys for being here. This is Hispanic Heritage Week. My name is Rosie Rodriguez. I'm the National President of eXp Latino. Tune in, because we've got some exciting panels coming up. We've got a East Coast icon panel, and we have two of the top teams in the country, Leo. I don't know if you do this, but two of the top teams in the company that are selling over 1,000 homes a year, they're Latinos. And we're going to have a conversation about what's working for them, how they're shifting. So that's going to be on Friday. Thank you so much, everybody, and we'll see you at eXpCon next week in Las Vegas.